Oprah is a biblical name, Orpah, that exists because a midwife made an error filling in the paperwork. By the end of this video, you will never hear why Oprah is a biblical name that got mispronounced into a new word the same way again. To understand why Oprah is a biblical name that got mispronounced into a new word, picture the trade routes and scriptoriums where this word first surfaced. 20th century is when the word first shows up in writing, but the idea behind it is older. The world that produced this word ran on different assumptions about meaning, status, and what was worth naming. Oprah Gayle Winfrey is an American talk show host, television producer, actress, author, and media proprietor. She is best known for her talk show, The Oprah Winfrey Show, broadcast from Chicago, which ran in national syndication for 25 years, from 1986 to 2011. Languages do not borrow or coin words by accident. Every new word fills a gap, something people needed to say that they had no clean way of saying before. Why Oprah is a biblical name that got mispronounced into a new word filled that gap, and the shape of the gap tells us something about the people who felt it. Origin story. The trail starts with older European tongues. A scribe whose name survives only in the margins, a working copyist, used the earliest known form of why Oprah is a biblical name that got mispronounced into a new word 20th century in a regional capital. He didn't use it the way we do. In his writing, it described something concrete, almost mechanical, closer to the literal sense baked into older European tongues. A generation later, a later chronicler, a court historian, picked up the word 20th century and started bending it. By the time the manuscript reached the same region, why Oprah is a biblical name that got mispronounced into a new word had drifted from a thing you could point at into a thing you could feel. That drift is the whole story. What these two sources have in common is more interesting than the differences. Both used why Oprah is a biblical name that got mispronounced into a new word to mean something more specific, more grounded, more physical than the airy abstraction it became. The meaning we use today is a kind of late-arriving ghost of the original. The transition happened gradually, across generations of speakers who were not trying to change anything. They were just using the word the way it felt right, and in doing so they nudged the meaning a fraction of a degree each time. Over 2 centuries, fractions add up. The misconception, here is where most people get why Oprah is a biblical name that got mispronounced into a new word wrong. Orpah from Book of Ruth, the midwife, misread it on the birth certificate. This isn't a small error. It changes what the word is doing in a sentence. Once you see the original meaning, the modern uses look like echoes, fragments of something the early speakers would have understood instantly, and we have mostly forgotten. The misconception is not random. It follows a pattern common to words that shift from concrete to abstract. People attach the word to the feeling it produces rather than the mechanism that produces it. The feeling is real, but the etymology is something else entirely. Modern echoes. The old meaning hasn't disappeared. It hides in plain sight. Listen for it the next time someone uses why Oprah is a biblical name that got mispronounced into a new word in a context that feels slightly off, slightly more loaded than they realized. That extra weight is the historical residue. It's the part of the word that a scribe whose name survives only in the margins would still recognize. The interesting thing about language is that it carries its own archaeology. You do not need to dig. The layers are right there on the surface if you know what you are looking at. Deeper connections. Why Oprah is a biblical name that got mispronounced into a new word does not exist in isolation. Pull on the thread and related words surface. The same root that gave us why Oprah is a biblical name that got mispronounced into a new word also fed into other words you use every day without thinking twice. That shared ancestry is not a coincidence. It reflects a cluster of ideas that mattered enough to people that they built an entire vocabulary around them. This is what makes etymology more than trivia. Every word is a fossil. It preserves evidence of how people thought, what they feared, what they valued, and what they could not quite find words for until one day they could. Why Oprah is a biblical name that got mispronounced into a new word is one of those fossils. Now that you know what to look for, you will start spotting the others. What is next? If this changed how you hear why Oprah is a biblical name that got mispronounced into a new word, subscribe. Next video. Another word you have been using wrong, and this one is worse.